My name is Katie Nelson, and I work for the Georgia Room, and that is part of Cobb County Public Library System. Thank you for joining me in this virtual program. This last time we did this topic was July 9th, 2020. So I try to update the details of this program each time I do it. So if it is a little bit out of date, please just contact me and I can add it to any future programs. This particular topic gets updated every time I do it. But I was actually requested by several patrons to talk about this program over the summer. So we tried to get it as close as we could to the holiday for July 4th. So the topic is the Georgia Signers of the Declaration of Independence. All right, let me just get us started here. So thank you for joining me for the virtual Georgia Room series. We try and do these every other Thursday. Sorry about that. And we typically do voting on one of our social media platforms. We do have the next one planned out already because it was what the topic was voted on, but the other one it was in competition with had a very close tie. So not quite a tie, but it was a very close second. So we're going to go ahead and do that topic, and then we'll have voting reopen for the following program. So as of right now, we do have these 7 branches open, and I believe they are working on opening the others soon. But these are the contact phones for each of the branches. I myself am at North Cobb Regional, and you are welcome to come in now and say hello. You can also come in and ask any questions you have. We have Carolyn and Lauren at West Cobb Regional, so you are welcome to go and visit them there. And we have Jeff, who is at Gritters. They have not yet opened, but we are waiting on news for that. We do have limited services in place. All study rooms are unavailable, but you are still welcome to come in and use the computers for 2 hours a day. And you are welcome to come in and use the reference materials and check out books and ask us any questions that you may have. You are asked to do a temperature check upon arrival into the library. Masks are not required. They are just encouraged, but not required. We are all wearing masks because we are around quite a few people a day, so we just want to play it safe on our end. And as of right now, all of our programs will remain virtual for the foreseeable future. So Carolyn and I were able to do a little bit of a walkthrough with the Georgia Room, and I wanted to show off a couple of pictures that I took. Well, not this one, but it's a wonderful space that we're looking forward to moving in once renovations are done. So this is the entrance to our Georgia Room. The desk, that's only its base. It will get a little bit higher, but we do have built-in bookshelves and quite a large bay window. And then this is the conference room, and it can fit at least 10 people. I think it can fit more, but we'll see. We'll be safe about it. But it is quite large, and we can fit larger groups in here as well. This is actually the back wall of the Georgia Room, and that door is an exit only, but it's a lot closer to the patron bathroom. So if you have ever visited the old Georgia Room, you knew it was a little bit of a trek to the bathroom. So this one is actually a lot closer. And then we will have some shelving along these walls, but the majority of our shelving will be in the middle of the room, and these are very long bookshelves. You can't really tell from this picture, but this is what the Georgia Room will look like from our desk at the entrance. And you can see it goes down quite a bit, and we have lots of windows and natural lighting in as well. And then I think we still have the best view in the library. This is overlooking uh, the federal cemetery, and we are still planning out where everything's gonna go. We may make seating arrangements by the windows so everybody has a window to sit at. Um, but things are constantly changing, and we're hoping that we can make this room as comfortable as the last one. So let me go ahead and get started on the Georgia signers of the Declaration. So this is a painting that many people have come across. It is done by John Trumbull. He was not present at the signing, but he manages to represent all of the signers fairly well in this painting. And I always like to show it off because it's so we remember what we are talking about in the overall view. So to travel to to the content the convention is it's risky. This is way before any cars and highways and airplanes and things like that. Um, so Button Gwinnett and George Walton are the two of the signers from Georgia. They traveled by land, but Dr. Lyman Hall actually traveled by sea, and he was one of the first representatives there of any of the states. He was very gung ho about this, about independence for the colonies. And it was time consuming to travel, so it could take weeks, if days to weeks, depending on how fast you were traveling. So this is an image I found of the Georgia signers. You can see Button Gwinnett on the left, George Walton in the middle, and Dr. Lyman Hall on the right. And all three of their signatures occurred on August 2nd, 1776. So I will start with Button Gwinnett. He was born in England around 1732 to 1735. I've found a couple dates for that. And he was born in, I apologize, Gloucestershire in Great Britain. And it was about the time that Oglethorpe came to Georgia. And we know that he was born around this time because he was baptized in St. Catherine's Church on April 10th, 1735. And he had a respectable upbringing and a decent education. He became a merchant in Bristol, and he continued his passion as a merchant in America by moving to Charleston, South Carolina, in 1762. And this was shortly after he married Anne Bourne, and they had moved to the Americas not long after their marriage. So after moving to South Carolina, he shortly moved to Georgia in 1765 and established a plantation on St. Catherine's Island, that is around the Golden Isles on the Georgia coast. So he began his political career likely due to his friendship with Dr. Lyman Hall. He initially believed in the idea of independence, but did not think the colonies could succeed. And this opinion lasted until, this opinion lasted until about 1775. I wasn't sure about the switch, but it looks like he had a complete 180, and he came out strong in favor of American colonies' independence and the establishment of enduring rights for the colonies on a permanent basis. He was elected a representative of Georgia by the General Assembly in 1776 and arrived in Philadelphia in May of the same year. And again, with the other two signers, he signed on August 2nd, 1776, along with Dr. Hall and George Walton. And he was selected as a delegate for the Second Continental Congress, along with Dr. Lyman Hall, George Walton, Archibald Bullock, and John Houston. Now, for this program, I only focused on Dr. Hall, Mr. Walton, and Mr. Gwinnett. I did not focus on the other two, so I'm not 100% sure on their On their futures after the Continental Congress, I just know that they did not sign, and therefore they are not a Georgia signer. So Mr. Gwinnett was actually reelected as a representative in October for 1777. So, and after signing the Declaration, February of 77, he attended a convention of citizens in Savannah, of which the topic of state governance and a state constitution was discussed. And he actually wrote the outline of our Georgia state constitution. He also served as Georgia Speaker of the House, and he served as provisional president of Georgia from February to March of 77. But he did lose the election for Georgia governor. Shortly after he was elevated to the presidential office of the Provincial Council, it's a little bit of a tongue twister. He used his position to upstand General McIntosh by taking overarching command of the Georgia Continental Army. So, Lackland McIntosh and Button Gwinnett were hated rivals. And it was Button Gwinnett, it was quite calm, but he could have a temper when he disagreed with somebody, and Lackland McIntosh was somebody he definitely disagreed with. And the feeling was mutual. So he was a representative of Georgia in Congress, but he was in competition for the position of Brigadier General in the Continental Brigade for Georgia. And this was in competition with Lackland McIntosh, who actually achieved it over him. So in response, Gwinnett planned to command an expedition to East Florida above McIntosh and excluded him from his own authority over the troops. And although Gwinnett could not lead the expedition, he placed one of McIntosh's subordinates in charge. And it turns out the expedition failed, and it was likely to fail at that point. And it likely hurt Gwinnett's efforts to gain the governor's office in 1777. And this pretty much ended his political career. So during the governor's race, McIntosh fully supported Gwinnett's opponent, and who actually won. And after he won, General McIntosh pronounced Gwinnett as a scoundrel. So as a result, Gwinnett challenged McIntosh to a duel. At a distance of 12 feet, they both fired, and both were wounded, but Gwinnett's was fatal, and he shortly died thereafter. So he died at only 45 years of age, and no one knows exactly where his remains are. They are suspected to be buried at the old colonial cemetery in Savannah under an unmarked grave. He was described as tall and of noble stature, polite but quick to temper. And his autograph is one of the most expensive to collect of the signers, and only 30 legitimate copies exist, many held in museums or private collections. There is a saying called rare as a button Gwinnett, and it's referring to the rarity of his signature. And I like this summation of his career. It was brief but brilliant. So moving on to Dr. Lyman Hall, he was born in Wallingford, Connecticut, April 2nd, about 1724. And he actually he married Abigail Burr, who died about a year into their marriage, and then married Mary Osborne later. And because I had just watched Hamilton, so the musical, I just had to know. It turns out Abigail Burr and Aaron Burr, who won the duel against Hamilton, I don't know won if is the right word, but they're actually second cousins, and her grandfather is the half brother to his grandfather. All right, moving on back to Dr. Hall. So he was 52 years of age when he signed, but before then he had actually studied at Yale and was ordained as a minister. Um, but he was dismissed from his parish about 2 years after due to moral issues. So he studied as a physician and moved to South Carolina in 1752. Um, and later that year, he decided to move to Georgia and lived at Sunbury in Midway, near the southeast. And he lived here until revolutionary pursuits took over his focus. So of the three, Dr. Hall was likely the most patriotic, um, and he was so patriotic he encouraged Gwinnett to get involved, which we just heard how that turned out. He knew it would be hard work to get independence, but he was determined to see it through. He lived in the parish of St. John at the coast, and it was a precarious location as it was between the Creek tribes and the Royal Province of Florida. But this parish actually combined with two other parishes to make what we now know as Liberty County. And this is because this was the first place in Georgia to really support liberty for the colonies. So the parish's citizens, differing from the rest of the state, were undoubtedly devoted to the movement of independence. Oops, apologies. I have a lot of buttons. On July of 1774, there was a meeting held in Savannah where Dr. Hall appeared as a representative of St. John's Parish, but little progress was made. However, in 1775, in January, it was agreed to petition the king for a redress of grievances. But the parish of St. John said that wasn't enough. So they made an application to the Committee of Correspondence in Charleston, South Carolina, to ally. They really wanted to make friends and see this through. Well, Charleston, South Carolina was supportive. They declined the allyship because it was too far away. So as Savannah, as the meetings in Savannah had little progress, St. John's Parish proceeded to have no dealings whatsoever, no economic, no slave trade, and really just no merchant trade at all. And so St. John's Parish also chose Dr. Hall through almost a unanimous vote to act as a representative to Congress. For the little parish of St. John, Dr. Hall represented. So he arrived in Philadelphia in 1775 in about early March, and he attended throughout the conventions, but he was questioned on the legitimacy of his right to vote as he only represented a parish, not the colony. But he was one of the 5 delegates sent later, and 3 of whom attended the adjourned meeting September 13th, 1775. And he had been reelected annually as a representative through 1780 until he retired from office. When the British entered Georgia, Dr. Hall removed his family to Connecticut, leaving behind all land and property to be seized by the British. And he returned to Georgia in 1782 and was elected to Georgia magistrate in 1783. He served as Georgia governor from 1783 to 84. He co-founds the University of Georgia in 1785. He becomes a justice of the Superior Court of Chatham County from 1785 to 1790 until he resigns. And in 1790, He moves to Burke County and purchases the Shell Bluff Plantation, where he dies later that year at 67 years of age. And a description of him was that he was tall, easygoing, courteous, warm, enthusiastic, charismatic, and passionate, yet he was quite shy in formal company. And I did want to show this so you can see where St. John's Parish is in Georgia. It's quite tiny, but they're quite passionate for where they were and who they were as a little community. So moving on to George Walton, the third signer. He was born in Frederick County, Virginia. I've gotten a few different dates, but we know it was in the 1740s. He married Dorothy Camber, and he was considered one of the youngest signers. As we do not know his exact birth date, he could have signed anywhere between his 20s to his early 30s. He was apprenticed to a carpenter early on, and he was ardently bent on learning everything he could. So he just, as he apprenticed during the day, he would read everything he could get his hands on at night. And at the end of his apprenticeship, he moved to Georgia and worked in a law office. And he clerked for an attorney there as he pursued his law degree, and he officially became a lawyer in 1774. He attended the Friends of Liberty meeting at Tondy's Tavern in Savannah during a time when Georgia remained under British rule and loyalty, and this took place on July 27, 1774. An event to consider and debate the preservation of rights, the Tondy's Tavern meeting looked to really push for independence for the people of Georgia. And a second meeting was put forth by the Loyalist governor, who induced another meeting January of 1775, but they sabotaged the petition of grievances to be presented to the king. So the Committee of Safety met a month later, and a majority here were set on a temporizing policy, which meant they really didn't want anything to change, and to go for independence was to ruin a good thing, pretty much. So this was actually the same event that caused St. John's Parish to separate and really just do their own thing. So, yeah. But by July, the Convention of Georgia acceded and sent 5 delegates to Philadelphia, including Dr. Lyman Hall, Archibald Bullock, John Houston, and then John Zubley and Noble Jones. So we've actually sent about 7 delegates, but only 3 actually stood by and agreed to sign. So Walton was elected as a representative the following February in 1776, and subsequently re-elected for the following term in October. He also fought in the state militia and was present during the surrender of Savannah to the British. He was wounded by a gunshot to the thigh and captured as a prisoner of war for 10 months before being traded for a British naval captain in September of 1779. And just a month later, he was elected the Georgia governor. He was very popular amongst Georgians. He was a commissioner to treat with the local tribes and negotiate a treaty with the Cherokee in Tennessee in 1793. He was 6 times elected to represent as a representative in Congress. He was 2 times a Georgia governor. He had 1 term as a U.S. senator, and he non-sequentially 4 times judge of superior courts, which he held for a total of 15 years until he died. He has a long resume. He also served as the Chief Justice of Georgia from 1783 to 84. He was a delegate in the state constitutional convention that ratified the U.S. Constitution in 1788. He served as Georgia governor in 1789. He replaced James Jackson, who resigned in November of 1795, and took his place as senator in Congress. And February 2nd, 1804, he dies in Augusta and is buried on his plantation. So a description of him is that he was passionate, patriotic, and confident in both his role to represent the state and in the pursuit of independence. And he was also quite nitpicky and sarcastic. So he was definitely an interesting person. So this is the Tonde's Tavern as it still stands in Savannah. You can still go in there. It's mainly lauded as a haunted tavern, but it is the original building. I think it's seen quite a few improvements, but they do. It's still in the same location, and it's still recommended as a great place to see in Savannah. And this is actually the front page of its website. So, jumping into the legacies of the signer. This is currently St. Catherine's Island today. It is a national park, and today the St. Catherine's Island Foundation owns and manages the island, which is a National Historic Landmark, as an historic site, archaeological resource, and wildlife preserve, which is quite common for the Golden Isles on the Georgia coast. St. Catherine's Island today is a private nature preserve and research site that educators and scholars use to study Georgia's coastal ecology, geology, fauna, flora, and 6,000 years of human history. The beach is accessible by private boat, but the interior of the island is not accessible to the public in order to conserve its natural and historic resources. And over 1 million artifacts have found on the island are a part of the St. Catherine's Island Foundation and Edward John Noble Foundation collection, which is stored and exhibited in the Fernbank Museum of Natural History in Atlanta, Georgia. And there is an old house on the island constructed of tabby, which is mortar made with limestone. It's also constructed with seashells and sand, and is believed to be the family home of the Gwinnetts. So it's quite pretty. And these pews right here on the left side, they're considered to be left over from the original mission when the Spanish came to St. Catherine's Island, so long before the English ever made it there. So this is the Signers Monument in Augusta, Georgia, and it was dedicated on July 4th in 1848. Both Dr. Hall and George Walton were reinterred below, so their remains are currently at that location. And as we discussed before, Button Gwinnett's remains are unknown, or his location is unknown. And this is the current transcription. It really just talks a lot about their lives, a brief summation of their lives, which we just discussed for each of them. And another legacy they had is there are 3 counties respectively named for each of them. It was authorized December 15th in 1818 for 1820 naming. And during this 3rd land lottery of Georgia, we have 7 new counties, including Gwinnett, Hall, and Walton. And they're just east of Atlanta. And Gwinnett, if you're familiar with Metro Atlanta, Gwinnett County is right next to Fulton. So in genealogy and local history, we have Daughters of the American Revolution chapters. We have the Lyman Hall chapter, which was established in December of 1895 in Meriden, Connecticut. We have the George Walton chapter, established in 1900 in Columbus, Georgia. And there is a Sunbury chapter established in 1912. For Sons of the American Revolution, we also have a Button Gwinnett chapter, which was established in 1998 in Gwinnett County. We have multiple schools named in their honor, including Walton High School in Cobb County and Lyman Hall High School, established in 1916 in Connecticut. There are multiple elementary schools named, especially for Dr. Lyman Hall. And then we also have Georgia Gwinnett College. It's not included here, but we also have a Sons of the American Revolution chapter for Dr. Lyman Hall in Gainesville. And this is such a fun topic to talk about. Meadow Garden is still here. It is formerly the home of George Walton. It was built during his second term as governor of Georgia. And it is considered a Sands Hill cottage style, which is common in that area. It's on land confiscated from the Tories. And it was in the Walton family until 1812. And it changed hands, and it is currently in the hands of the DAR. So right now, it is owned and operated by the Georgia State Society of the Daughters of the American Revolution. And so I actually have a little bit that was passed to me from a DAR member the last time I did this program. The DAR purchased the Meadow Garden in 1900 for $2,000. It was first opened to the public as a house museum on November 21st, 1901. This is the only property that the National Society ever owned outside of its property in Washington, D.C., and that is the National Society for the Daughters of the American Revolution. The home was opened as a museum in 1901. The Meadow Garden, the Georgia Daughters of the American Revolution have essentially been the caretakers of Meadow Garden since its purchase. However, the National Society did not transfer the deed of ownership to the Georgia State Society until 1960. The members of the Augusta DAR chapter were instrumental in saving the home, but it is under the care of the Georgia State Society as a whole. 80 years after its purchase by the DAR, it was declared a National Historic Landmark by the National Park Society. And they said they are currently working through a master plan for restoration and preservation. The roof line was recently adjusted to reflect the original roof line of the home. Okay. And this is actually a cute little video. I'm not going to show it due to I'm a little nervous about the copyright on it, but it is a brief little video made by Stephen Colbert and Lin-Manuel Miranda, who the latter is the creator of Hamilton the musical, or one of the main creators, I should say. There are so many people who participated, but it is a cute little song. They talk about how the shortness of Button Gwinnett's political career, but it is a little bit catchy. So that's just something I like to point out, and it is quite fun to watch. All right. Thank you for joining me for this program on the Georgia Signers of the Declaration of Independence. My name is Katie Nelson. My email is right here. You can also email the Georgia Room as a whole. And thank you for tuning in.